annual. So really quickly, an annual is one of the plants that you plant every year. It doesn't live through the winter. Those are perennials that come back every year. There's also biennials. We'll discuss them a little bit more with perennials. There's not a lot of options in that. It's not really one you need to learn. So essentially, in a nutshell, an annual in one growing season, however long that season may be, but in one growing season, an annual starts from seed and goes all the way through its life to produce a seed. So from there you have seed, then you have the germination of the seed, then you have vegetative growth, then you have flower, then you have it dying, and if it dies and you don't deadhead it, we'll discuss deadheading later, it will produce a seed. And that's it. So in a nutshell, an annual is any plant that can't make it. Now, if you have an annual, and pansies are notorious for it, their seeds can live through the winter. So if you plant pansies, say, and then the next spring you see pansies, your pansy did not live through the winter, but the seed did, and it's going through that cycle again. So that seed is germinating, it'll go all the way through to produce a seed. So that is, in a nutshell, an annual. Now, when we talk annual, so I keep my notes here so I can stay on track. If any of you follow me on GA Kids TV, you know how quick I can segue. I'll be halfway through a sentence, a thought will pop into here, and I'm gone. For these webinars, we do try and up our game a little, and time is of the essence. GA Kids TV is, see, I totally segued. I've even got notes. GA Kids TV is very much designed just to be lighthearted, educational, fun. These are definitely more focus driven, so I will stay on track now, I promise. But when we think annuals, there's kind of two schools of thought we think of. We either think of annual flowers, ones like this, or annual veggies, ones like this. At the end of the day, they're both annuals, so it doesn't really matter what you call them. And annual flowers, you know, there's all different kinds. There's petunias, verbenas, marigolds, sunflowers, geraniums, lobelia, tons of different types. And it's the same with the veggies. With the veggies, I'm kind of seeing what I've got written down here. So tomato, pepper, cucumber, basil, corn, there's cabbage, there's lettuce, there's spinach. So the list goes on and on and on. By no way, shape, or form is what you see on the slide a definitive list of what is an annual. But they carry with them, in and of themselves, you know, just an inherent importance. For us, aesthetic, especially here, you know, it's a bit different if you live somewhere in a better hardy zone, a better climactic zone. I remember, you know, a few years ago, we went to Australia and we're driving down the highway, and growing wild in the middle of the highway is bird of paradise. I'm sure the Australians, you know, yeah, they love their flowers, but I'm sure they're not super eager to run and put out geraniums in the spring because they're surrounded by it. But for us in northern climates, we have long, hard winters. And that, not just Calgary, I'm talking all across Canada, northern US, Europe, you know, everywhere, you know, while those subtropical zones get hard winters. So the annuals are really important to, I believe, us from an aesthetic point of view, to see color again. You know, after a long winter, who doesn't want to see something like this? Told you it was going to come back. You know, prolific blooms, bright colors, nice greens, like all of that, you know, it's good for the soul. It's good for the mental state. It's just good. And then, of course, there's food, growing your own food, having fun, seeing what you can do, getting kids to help. Pro tip, I'm not making this up. This isn't like one of those, you know, provided I'm going to add something at the end, but I have never in my life met a kid who grew a vegetable who then did not want to at least try that vegetable. They may not like it, but they will eat it, as opposed to a store-bought vegetable where you're like, will you just try it? And kids are like, nope. They've grown it, they will try it. I've never seen one that didn't. They may not like it, but they will try to like it. So the food is really important. And another thing is that they are incredibly important to pollinators. So a lot of our pollinators will hibernate, or in the case of butterflies and whatnot, they migrate. So, the monarchs go down to Mexico, that kind of thing. So when they're waking up or when they're finished the migration, hummingbirds, they also migrate. Hummingbirds are pollinators. When they come back, especially the hibernating ones, we all know, a bear comes out of hibernation, it's hungry. It's the exact same for those pollinators. And they are hungry. What are they looking for? Well, they're looking for that early food. And especially in the case of a veggie, that's a beautiful flower, right? The strawberry flower is a beautiful, beautiful flower, but we're not growing it for the flower. We want what's going to come after the flower. We want that seed. We want this to produce seed so we can gobble them up. And these are really, really important to get out for the pollinators. So that's one of the reasons why the annuals are so important. And then we have native annuals. And the higher you are in a climactic zone, say on the East Coast, the greater chance you are going to have more native annuals, as opposed to somewhere like here where our climactic zone isn't that high. And that's simply because whether or not the seed can live through the winter. So one that we have here that's very popular is the Gaillardia, blanket flower, I believe it's called. Common name here. I don't know what it is on the East Coast, common name. And it is crucial here. We all know the prairie crocus, they come up, they're a perennial, they're not actually a bulb, they're not a crocus. But for the annuals, these are essential to our native pollinators. So our native pollinators and our native annuals, they work together. They know that it's, hundreds of thousands of years of evolution have gotten us to this point. And this is where we are now. So, they've managed to adapt and get to know each other. And now this is where we are. So these are really, really essential to work together. So in a nutshell, that's what an annual is. That's what it does. And I can't stress enough the importance. I know so many people go nuts for the food annuals, peppers, tomatoes, kale, strawberries, list goes on. And I do too, I love them. I love growing them. I love working with Harry, my son, and working together. Jenny loves harvesting them, making tea from lavender. There's all kinds of great stuff. But on another note, I can't stress personally how important it is to me for color, for things like this after a winter, and seeing this and getting to enjoy these. It's so important after what we've been through. But at the end of the day, it's whatever makes you feel better, whatever makes you happy. So, a question I get asked often is, can I put annuals into my veggie plot? Well, the answer really simply is yes. Most of the veggies you're putting in there are annuals. But when you're talking about can I put annual flowers in, yes, annuals play well with all of the garden. They really do play well with others. Now, some of them can be used as companion planting to keep away certain pests, which is also playing well with others. But I want to talk today more about the aesthetic value. And what will happen a lot of times is, and I'm going to use these as an example again. So what I want to do is, I want to illustrate how much of a game changer these annuals can be. And if you look, what we'll do is we'll talk about the trees because that is literally the next slide. So again, staying on target, that's why I got my notes. Nope, actually, I lied. I'm all over the place this morning. I swear we got it sorted out. But annuals with the trees, they work so well because a lot of times, and immature trees especially, if you're thinking of an apple tree and you've got this immense, mature, beautiful apple tree, and it is covered in apple blossoms, the pollinators will find it. They can't miss it. It is a beacon for them. It's like driving down the highway late at night and you're hungry and you see a fast food neon sign lit up, right? You can't miss it. It's neon. It's a black sky. You see it. You're like, oh, there is food there. Well, that's what, a tree like that does. But an immature tree that might only have, a handful of blossoms comparatively. If you cover that all around the base of it with annuals, you're going to encourage the pollinators. The more flowers there are, the more the pollinators will see. And you get a beautiful aesthetic. Another great thing is that the roots of annuals, they're not like a perennial. It's one season and done. So the roots aren't going to develop this massive rooting system. They stay relatively shallow. Most of the growth is up here for seed development. So they don't have to fight against the roots of the tree. So they grow well together, and they can act as a mulch to help control. So they're going to be sitting there taking up what sun they can, or under a canopy of a tree, you put in a shade level like your begonias, and they'll help protect that root system. So they really, really work well together. And when you put them in with with your veggies, so when you put you know, again, this is a veggie. I know it's a fruit, but it has a flower on it. The rest don't. But you put in a strawberry like this. And again, it's a beautiful flower, but look how small it is. Well, you put that flower next to it. Which one, again, do you think gets the attention? And again, it's like, you know, driving down that highway and seeing the massive neon sign as opposed to one of those little stand-up signs. Well, your eye is going to go to the neon one. So this will attract the pollinator over. Now the pollinator hits this, oh, I'm all done. Well, now look, it's got even more. So it's a win-win. It's a win for you because your strawberry is getting pollinated. It's taking care of that. It's a win for the pollinator. So playing nice with others and putting annual flowers in with your annual veggies is massively important. And that goes for everything. The flower on a pepper is tiny. It's not even like this. And I've had numerous people who are like, well, you know, I had them out and they were sitting there, but they didn't get pollinated. They put out a ton of blooms, but, you know, I only got a couple of peppers. And the reason why is if they're not getting pollinated, you're not going to end up with that fruit. It doesn't matter what else you do. So attracting the pollinators into your garden is key. And that's why, you know, you got a tomato plant, you got peppers, you got something like that, hanging something like this above it. This is your neon sign. This is what's going to get the attention of them. And then they're going to look for the blooms on this. So there's all kinds of tricks that you can do together. And another great thing is putting annuals throughout a perennial garden. And again, this one is just for aesthetic, you know, but you have perennials and you can get perennials. And again, we'll discuss this in the perennial webinar. But you can have perennials in bloom from early spring all the way through to late fall, no problem. But it's really, really hard just seasonally to time it so that there's always something in bloom. The vast majority of the time, there'll be, you know, peaks and valleys. You'll have some amazing blooms on your perennials. And then as those blooms are finishing, you know, your next ones, like, so your spring blooms are finishing, your summer blooms aren't quite out, and you've got that transition period. Enter the annual. So one thing annuals are amazing for is full season color. So while you're waiting on your perennials, you know, oh, these are finished, deadhead, clean them up. These haven't come out yet, so you're fertilizing and you're tending them. These guys are just popping out blooms. They're just making it happen. So they act as an incredible filler with that full season color, and they lend an amazing aesthetic to the garden. So, you know, those are how they play really well with others. You know, we have shrubs. They're incredible. Who doesn't love lilacs? You know, you got a small lilac shrub, big blooms, fragrant, they bring the pollinators in. They're short-lived and we have a long season. Once they're done, well, you know what? While you're waiting for the next shrub or you're waiting for the next perennial, that's where these guys step in. So they work great with perennials. They work great, obviously, with other annual flowers, amazing with veggies and trees and shrubs. They play well with everything in your garden. And then, you know, the other thing we see more and more of is, you know, more and more infills happen and more houses are becoming taller so that they're on smaller plots of land. And by the very nature, you know, people put up their fences and they've got a house there and they lose more and more sun. Or, you know, it doesn't matter. Even you could have an acreage, okay? And your own house is going to cast a shadow So your south side is going to be amazing, but your northeast side, not so much. You might have a ton of trees. You're always going to have shady spots, be it a garden in dense shade, or be it a garden, with just a small shade spot, but you want to put something there. Maybe you want your patio in the shade so you can cool down after working in the garden, but you still want to put flowers or veggies or something on that patio. It's absolutely doable. When I landscaped in Montreal, we did a garden, and it was just a small urban garden, and I swear the sun never hit it. And they didn't want lawn because grass was too hard to keep alive. So we redid it all, and we did perennials and trees and whatnot as well. And there were some dogwoods in there. There was some viburnum or cranberry growing. We had a ton of ferns and lily of the valley, and then we augmented it with a ton of shade annuals. And you're not limited. Again, on that slide that I'm showing, those are just a handful. There is more, and these ones are incredible. Fun little fact: the New Guinea impatient. Once you get to hardiness zone, I believe it's 10, might be 9, but I think it's 10. Once you get to hardiness zone 10, the New Guinea impatient is actually a perennial. And a perennial New Guinea impatient can actually get, I think, around 4 to 5 foot tall and about 3 to 4 foot wide. This massive, beautiful. Yeah. Wow. True story. Yeah. And yet here, they get an inkling that there might be a frost, and they're like, I'm out. Peace, dead, over. So, what we view as an annual, and that's a great thing. I want to touch on that on the aesthetics as well. Annuals are a great leveler. Calgary, depending on where you are, our hardiness zone is a 3 or even a 2B. You go to Victoria, I believe the hardiness zone is 8 or 9. You go to Montreal, it's a 5B or 6. Again, there's microclimates. Annuals are the great leveler. They level the playing field for us. It doesn't matter where you are, you can grow an annual. So, you're limited in the choice of perennials you can grow here, as opposed to, say, Montreal, as opposed to, say, Vancouver. Same with trees, shrubs, all of that. Not with annuals, not with veggies. So, yeah, we might have a shorter growing season, stuff like that, but you can still have the same color. So they really level the playing field. And it's the same with the full sun annuals. A lot of times here in Calgary, there's a flip side to what I was saying about the shade. When late June, July, and August hit here, we get hot and we get dry. It's incredible. One end of the thermometer in 6 months to the other end. And we need annuals that can really take that. And that's where they come in. Sunflowers, right? The amount of energy required for a plant that comes from a seed this big to make me look small, and I'm 6'1", like these get 8, 9, 10 foot tall. Flowers like this on them. Zinnias do amazing here. Lavender, always a popular one. Lavender is one of those annuals. I'm always shocked, always, when somebody's like, I don't like lavender. And I'm like, I want to convince them to like it, even though that's a futile exercise. But I'm like, and my head's raising. I'm like, it's good for sleep. It smells really good. It's good for pollen. And I'm like, okay, if they don't like it, they don't like it. Why am I trying to sell them it? But yeah, so, you have to play that. And the great thing about it, you can have an area that's full sun and your tree's doing amazing, but under your tree is shade. And right next to it, you can have sunflowers growing incredible. And then right around them, you've got New Guinea impatiens because they're in the shade. And they play so well. You get different colors of the foliage and different colors of the flowers. So they work really well. And another thing that people ask for a lot is growing veggies in the shade. And that one is a little trickier. Anything that produces, and produces a lot. So like I just mentioned about the sunflower. And to get that tall in one season, literally we're talking 3 months, put out a flower as big as my head. It requires a lot of energy. Where do plants get their energy? The sun. So when we think about a veggie, and we think about a tomato, strawberry, pepper, and they're high production plants. They put out a lot of flowers, they put out a lot of fruit. You're constantly harvesting it. That requires, a lot of things, but the two major things, a ton of water and a ton of light. What if you don't have the light? The water's easy enough, watering can, hose, whatever. You can get water to them, irrigation, but you can't do light. It's just not going to happen outside. But you might still want to grow your veggies. Now, if the front of your house, you don't have a lot of room, but it gets full sun, you can do container growing. We'll talk about that when we get to that section. That's another webinar. So always sign up. If you've signed up for one, sign up for all of them. Sign up for the only ones that interest you. After you watch this one, be like, I am never watching him again. Your choice. We don't hold it against you. But maybe you've only got a small area of sun. You can do pots. You can do containers for your veggies, and in the rest. So a good rule of thumb to go with, and you can see kind of on the list that we put there, anything where the veggie is the leaf tend to do good in the shade. So, and we don't have all of our veggies in. It's still very early, despite what the 19, 20 degrees today, full sun, 1 degree tomorrow, snow. Welcome to spring. So that's why we don't have our full complement out. I said at the beginning, I'm going to sound like a broken record for the next few months. Please, 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 please do not plant your annuals outside and do not leave them out overnight. You'll be sad. Okay, we're not going to have a good time. Put them out today, they're going to love it. Bring them inside, maybe keep them inside for a couple of days. But anything where the veggie that you eat is the leaf, kale, spinach, lettuce, I mean, the list goes there, parsley, arugula, they will do good in the shade. Then you can kind of see the intermediate ones, right? Carrots. Well, the whole vegetable is growing underground, and those leaves above ground, again, they're growing their leaves. They're not actually producing fruits, so they can take that in between. You see your beets, turnips, so a lot of the root vegetables, and then the high sun. That's what I'm talking about. The watermelons, tomatoes, strawberries, peppers, those high production plants. So that's a good rule of thumb to do. And then what we included, and I believe Brandy posts some of these slides, and we're going to post this video as a blog post. So if you do need to come back and reference it, it will be on our blog on our website. And I put some, just a slide up, just with some shade tolerant plants, so that you guys could see and have something to go on, because it's the number one thing. I always want people to be enthusiastic in their garden. I hate it when people say, I can't garden, or I have too much shade, or the area isn't big enough. This isn't braggadocious, it's just fact. You do it for as long as I have. I've landscaped everything. I've landscaped small balconies with window boxes to acreages and everything in between. And they all have a challenge. You might have an acreage, but you've got a limited budget, but you've got a ton of area. And you're like, you put a massive tree, it's like a drop in a bucket. It doesn't even stand out, to a tiny area in dense shade, right? Nothing is not without its challenge. So it's how we adapt, how we overcome, how we get there. So that was just for some inspiration. So that kind of covers, what is an annual? Now we're going to talk about how to plant an annual. So it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What annual we're talking about, whether we're talking about geraniums, pansies, kale, strawberries, peppers. We're talking about, I'm just going to keep bringing them on camera. We're talking about a hanging basket. Please, please, please put them out after last frost. Keep an eye on the weather forecast, especially your tender ones, like I said, New Guinea impatiens, ones like that. They're not going to have a good time. They get nipped with frost at the end of the season. You got a full season out of them. They get nipped by frost at the beginning. It's sad. And I'll quickly touch on that. A lot of people don't really understand why, and it's really simple when you break down the science. Once you know, it's essentially what the plant is used to. So we'll go to New Guinea impatiens because it's a great example. And where New Guinea impatiens come from, New Guinea, they don't get a frost, right? Frosts just don't happen there. So the plant has never evolved to have a cell wall that can handle it. It's a very thin cell wall. They get a lot of rain. Cell wall, okay, it's the difference. The primary difference between plant and animal cells is the cell wall. It's made up of water. So when you see a plant wilting, It's primarily because the water is depleted. The cell wall can't hold it up. When you give it a drink, that wall hardens. Boom, it lifts up again. Okay, wilty leaf, happy leaf. So that's how that goes. Now, what happens with a frost? Well, a frost is freezing water crystals, and it freezes that water inside, and it causes, irreparable cellular damage. Now, some of your hardier perennials, or annuals, I should say, sorry, they can tolerate it a bit better, and it doesn't do the same level of damage. So that's essentially how it kills it, just by freezing the water inside. And that's why you see those exceptionally tropical ones done and dead after one frost. And some of the pansies and petunias, they can keep going. Chrysanthemums, another great one. So that's the main reason. So again, plant after last frost. But back to how to plant an annual. So it doesn't matter if you look here, 1, 2, 3. Look at the size of those root balls. They're all annuals. So it doesn't matter which one of these you're planting. You want to make sure that when it goes in the ground, the level of your ground is the same level as your annual. So, you know what? Let's take out the geranium. It'll be the easiest one. Okay. So when you put that in the ground, that should be where your existing soil level is. You don't want it high where you're burying leaves, and you don't want it low where these roots get exposed to sun, cold, whatnot. So you can see there's a natural layer of soil. That's where you want your soil to be. Okay, we'll pop them right back in. And when you do it, you want to make sure that your soil, after you've got it level, so you dig it out, you put it in, you make it nice and level, and you want to make sure that you've got a good quality soil. You want to amend it. You want to add things. We'll get to that when we talk about fertilizers. And you want to make sure that your spacing is correct. Now, when you're talking about spacing, and you look at the slide, I think Brandy's got up right now. Again, it's tough for me to see. I don't have a monitor, but it's not really that important to space out your flowers. Okay, jam them in. Look at that. Okay, jam them in. We've got everything going on here. We got some Dusty Miller. We got marigolds. We got geraniums. And they are pushed in, and they're going to do fine. The roots will go down. The roots will get intermingled. Like I said, most of an annual, as opposed to a perennial and a tree and shrub, the growth is above, not below. So jam them in. Now we come to veggies. You want to make sure these are spaced. Yep. Can you jam them in together? Absolutely. But they're not going to love you. They're going to end up dying out because, again, they are high production. They need their room. They need their roots to go down. They need those adventitious roots to go looking for nutrients and fertilizers. They need to absorb water. So when you're doing it and you're spacing them out, that's what you want to do. And you want to make sure you've got a good quality soil. Now, the soil quality, you want it light enough that the roots can get through it, but you want it heavy enough to give support and organic and nutritious information. Now, a soil in your bed, we're going to talk about this when we get to fertilizers. You'll supplement it. Soil in a container, I recommend using one of the Pro Mix soil blends, a herb and veggie or a potting mix. But we'll talk about that again when we get to the container planting webinar. So that is, in a nutshell, how you plant them. And then the other one that we get a lot is watering. People, the two main things that happen here, I wish the main thing that happened was people watered properly, but people either chronically underwater or they panic and they want to help them and they massively overwater. Neither of them are good. Underwatering causes wilt. You start getting wilt on the tomato. Well, it can't undergo photosynthesis. The plant doesn't have the strength, can't eat. It's trying just to stay alive. You overwater it. It can be difficult to overwater things like this as long as there's good drainage. But you overwater it, same thing. It's taking in too much water. It's flooded. It can't uptake nutrients. So all you got to do when you water is, after you plant, water immediately and water well. So in a container, it's something like this, okay, you want to see water pouring out the bottom. That's well watered. There'll always be drainage, okay? In your garden, you want to make sure that the water is sitting on the surface. You stop watering, so you've got your hose gun, turn it off, that water should percolate in. That's where you've got a good saturation point. You do it and you've got standing water, you've overwatered, you spray it, you turn it off, and there's no standing water at all, the soil's barely absorbed. So it's finding that balance. But immediately after planting, you want to water. Water your annuals often. They dry out, they drink. And again, remember what I said, okay? Their root system doesn't develop like a tree or a perennial. It's a much more shallow root system. So that water, you know, as the sun hits the soil, while it dries it out from the top down, if those roots are only underground that much, they can dry out quick and fast. Containers like this, it's black, it's absorbing heat. It's filled with roots. They're drinking all that water up. This will dry out. This, it's black, it's taking in heat. Now it's got wind hitting it. And look at this. You don't think this requires a ton of energy and water to keep going? Same thing. So you're going to want to water often. You're going to want to check. You can always do a finger check. Okay, that soil's nice and damp. It's good to go. And keep an eye on it like that. One size does not fit all for watering. You may have an area in the shade. It's completely sheltered. You might have to water once every 3 days. Okay. You may have another area in the shade that's exposed to the wind and dries out like that. You might have to water twice a day. So just because your begonias in this area need to be watered once every 3 days, your begonias in this area might not need the same. So you have to check. One size, I always say that, one size does not fit all in gardening. Whether that's selection. Some of you may look at that and be like, oh my God, I love it. That is beautiful. That is what I want. Others might hate it. Same with this. Some people just don't like tomatoes. Some people love them. Some people, my mom, hi mom, does not like strawberries. Weirdo, mom, still love you. Mom doesn't like strawberries, loves raspberries. One size doesn't fit all. And that's fantastic. That's why we get diversity. That's why we have fun. You know, it's all about, you know, being unique, being different, being varied. That's like the flavor of life. That's what I love. So the same applies for watering. One size does not fit all. So you always want to check, and containers and hanging baskets, always make sure, and your tomatoes. And then fertilizer. I get a lot of people who skimp on fertilizing, and a lot of times it's they don't understand it. And it makes a huge difference. So think of it like this. The water is just water. Every living thing, you know, essentially has, there's some examples, but every living thing does need water, however that may look. How much they need, when they need, how they need, that can all be different, but they need water. The sunlight is the food. That's what gives them the energy through photosynthesis, okay? The fertilizer, think of the fertilizer as like the multivitamin, if you will. The healthy thing, your 8 servings of fruits and vegetables. That's where your fertilizer comes in. Can your plant live with, water and sunlight, or, water and shade, whatever? Yes, it can. Of course it can. Will it thrive? Probably not as much. It'll live, it'll put out flowers, but again, we have a short season. All of our seasons are kind of short. Winter isn't as bad as we always make it out to be. Summer isn't as long as we wish it would be. You want your plants to be successful, so you've got to fertilize. And I mean, I posted a picture, and if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about being fertilized and unfertilized, there it is. And there's all different types of fertilizer. And the point of the fact is again, one size does not fit all. So we've got, a tomato fertilizer here, okay? And it's a liquid, it's water soluble. What else did I grab here? We got a flower fertilizer, it's water soluble, but it's a powder. I've got an organic tomato fertilizer that is a liquid as well. So do you want organic? Do you not want organic? Do you care one way or the other? An incomplete fertilizer, okay? NPK, well, 040. Now, I use this more as a supplement. I'm going to talk about that in 1 second, okay? Versus a complete fertilizer, 3612, NPK. So I don't want you to get hung up on the numbers. A lot of times you see, oh, look, it's got strawberries on it. It's got a raspberry on it for my mom. It's got a tomato on it, vegetables and fruits. There you go. That's what you need. Okay. Don't get hung up on the numbers. Don't panic. But if you do have a choice and you're looking for organic, well, then look for that organic tomato. And if you get stuck, reach out, ask somebody. You know, we got staff on the floor who will know all of this. Like I said at the beginning, DMs are open. Shoot us an email. Let us know. Comment, question, whatever it takes. So fertilizing, yes, it is important. Absolutely. Always follow according to the directions. You know, there's a story I tell, and it was a number of years ago, and it was a guy in Quebec who actually passed away. Right? And I don't want to scare anybody here, but he passed away from toxic shock. Every time he watered his cucumbers, which is twice a day, he was using a water-soluble chemical fertilizer, and he was upping the amounts. Well, a cucumber is 90% water. It was absorbing all that fertilizer. Then he was eating that. Okay, that's not great. The plant won't uptake it if you follow the directions. I've been fertilizing my plants for years. I've been eating them. I feed them to my family, and it's wonderful. Okay, so follow the directions. If your doctor gives you a prescription and he goes, there is 30 antibiotics, take 2 a day. That means after 15 days, you should be done. It doesn't mean take them all in one day and you'll get better 15 days quicker. So it's the same thing. We have figured it out. We've done the science. We know what the plant needs to be healthy, to make sure we stay healthy so everything lives. So please follow the manufacturer's recommendations. Don't overdo it. People tend to do that, and I always advise against it. Plus, keep your fertilizer in a cool, dry place. It'll last you until it's all used up. So there's no point in wasting your time and your money either. So that's what I want to talk about that. And then, you know, you want to use a flowering fertilizer for your flowers, a veg fertilizer for your veggies. At the end of the day, if you've mixed a pot and you've got something like this, with a tomato growing in it and geraniums, like we were saying, a pollinator's paradise, to bring those ones in. That's a coined term, by the way, by somebody. By Brent. If it's more important that you have great tomatoes, use a tomato fertilizer, and that'll do your flowers. If it's more important you have flowers, use a flowering fertilizer, it'll do your tomatoes. So you can play around with that. And then what I was saying about adding in supplements. Blossom end rot. Oh, that's such an ugly picture. Yeah. It really is. It's so easy to avoid. And that's where this comes in. Blossom end rot is essentially a calcium deficiency. Okay. You add something like this, you'll never see it. Okay. We have a power bloom. So this is, again, an organic flower fertilizer. And we've also got this, and this is a volcanic organic rock dust right here. And this is filled with all kinds of micronutrients and macronutrients for your soil. So you may want to amend it with other things. Again, do the research, ask us, find out what you need. We've got everything so that you're going to be successful. Every year that I grow, I'm successful every year. It's not hard. You figure out what works once, repeat as follow. And the wonderful thing is that I want to give you those tips. In case you haven't realized right now, the trick to me is getting me to stop talking, not getting me to talk about gardening. I want to make you enjoy it. I want to help you. You've got like that much enthusiasm. I want to grow it to this much. It's doable and it's fun. And then the last thing I want to touch on, and this is going to take us through the full cycle. So we talked about growing. We talked about spacing it out, making sure your plants would grow. We just talked about flowering and fruiting, and the fertilizers you're going to use. Now we're going to talk about deadheading. So the purpose of deadheading, especially on an annual, there is a purpose for perennials too, and we'll get to that, is to promote new growth. So you can see there's 2 flowers on a geranium. Tight geranium bud, one that's already finished, okay? So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to reach down the stem, and I'm going to pop him off, that easy, like that. Now, all of the energy it was taking to grow seeds into this, well, it's now putting in this, okay? Now, what it's doing is it's going, oh, we're still taking in energy, we're still got our photosynthesis, our fertilizers, but now it's putting it into new blooms, and it's going to make that bloom better, and it's going to put out more blooms. Look, there's one hidden right there, tiny little one coming out. So that energy on this one that's already finished is going to go into those. And what's going to end up happening is it'll promote general overall growth. It's going to be like, oh, I need to be healthier to put out more flowers. And away it goes again. Essentially, you're triggering its DNA. It puts out seed. Its job is done. Remember that cycle. Seed all the way through to seed. Once it's developed a seed, the job is done. It doesn't need to grow anymore. It's created the seed for the next generation to come alive. So you want to stop that. You want to make it keep growing. You want to trick it. And you want to promote that overall health. Now, if you want to gather seeds at the end, or you want your pansies to self-seed, do not deadhead. Like, let them go. Let them develop a seed pod. Do not deadhead your veggies. This flower starts turning and the petals go brown and they're falling off, and you're like, oh, I'll get rid of that deadhead. You just pulled your strawberry off. So you don't want to do that. Do deadhead your herbs. Your lavender, you kind of right on that cusp when it's done. You want to cut it so it's dry. And then it'll put out more flowers and more blooms, and it'll just keep the cycle going. At the end of the season, you can let it all go. And that's essentially what it boils down to with deadheading. So that kind of wraps us up. As you can tell, we could go into any of those subjects: fertilizing, deadheading, amending soil, supplements, container planting, in way more detail. But this is to give you guys a better foundation to understand that when you hear something, you're like, oh, yeah, I get it now. When you go home to plant, you're like, oh, wonderful. I can jam these guys together nice and tight, but I might want to give these guys a bit of space. So that's what we're looking to do here. And of course, I know I haven't covered everything that you guys want to hear. So this is where we open it to questions. So thank you guys for listening. And like I said, last week we had somebody who asked a question about lilacs that they'd kept in buckets, but they didn't know if they could now put them outside. I've never had a question like that before. So what we did is we asked them to shoot us a message. They did, and I just called Jana yesterday. Absolutely lovely. The lilacs were from her mom's house, and they were very important to her, and she desperately wanted to keep them alive. We've given her some information. She's going to reach out to me in July, and we're going to get it through. We're going to make sure those lilacs stay alive so that she can keep it going. I think I need to put this in my hair. Oh, I don't have hair anymore. I think I need to put that there.
Beautiful.
I think. So yeah, without any further ado, let's open it up to questions.
Yeah.